Hello everyone, so I'm just checking out everything, making sure things are ready to go. Whatever else, let's see. Nope, they didn't change those. I wasn't sure if they would have or not, so. Let us go drive around while we wait and see if anyone shows up. So, I had planned to come out later tonight, but Mindy forgot to tell me she was supposed to work today. So, she's at work and I just dropped her off at work and I'm driving around now, so. That's why I figured since I'm already in town, I might as well stream. I made her take her mask with her. Hopefully the new changes may actually change it to where my mom insists on her wearing her mask. We will see. So, even the CDC has now come out saying, wear a mask when you're out. At the same time, it's kind of funny, because now that the CDC is acknowledging that and that it could help, it's also starting the test for the antibodies is coming out, and it's starting to come back that some people have immunity, that the only time they remember getting sick was with the nasty virus that was going around in January. And that some people questioned that one, if it had already spread that bad at that time. But because everyone was saying, the World Health Organization and everything was saying that it couldn't have, no one was able to get tested at the time. And now people are coming back with testing for the virus. So, oh shoot, I thought that was a fortress. That's at the laundry. Okay, heebie-jeebies. That's down at church. I think that may be the one we'll go to. We'll go up in here and go around and do that. We'll go down to the church. I thought this was a fortress. I know it's a gym, and so that kind of threw me. So it should be interesting to see what happens in the next little while. It does sound like we may actually be on the edge of getting on top of everything. Because if that cold that went around then was really COVID-19, then there's a lot of people that have already had it. And that could be why some areas are not experiencing the hit as hard as some people as was expected. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that socially isolating is gone yet. Because it's not guaranteed that was it. The people who are testing, maybe they got exposed otherwise, and they just never came down with symptoms. Because they have heard of that happening too. So, it's kind of one of those, which came first? Did they, and causation versus otherwise. did the one in January actually give the antibodies, which would mean it was COVID-19, or was it a fluke and they actually came down with COVID-19 without symptoms? So that's one of the questions that has not been answered yet. The one thing that it will do is once we get answers, that'll help. Plus, if it is that, then they're going to become more likely to relax restrictions. Not guaranteed, but more likely to. Let's see where I'm at. Okay. Sorry, Jen, I was driving. Yeah, that is true, so we'll have to see. Now I'm seeing them. I was just talking and trying to figure out what to do before. So, homemade sanitizer. I've heard both ways. And it's really hard for me to say one or the other. I know someone who I would trust their knowledge that makes homemade sanitizer, but he's actually making it for his county, and he's the mayor of the county, the mayor, and it's on the East Coast. A lot of them are saying they wouldn't Well, when I glanced at the transit center and saw it wasn't a Fortress, I'm like, crap, I gotta go somewhere else. So a lot of them are saying they wouldn't, because of the supplies needed, because of the way things need to be done, they wouldn't trust homemade sanitizer. And that makes me even more suspicious about trusting it unless, this guy obviously is the mayor. He has access to some extra stuff that we may not have, that we probably don't have access to. At the same time, there's a lot of breweries and stuff that are automatically getting on the hand sanitizer wagon. And that makes me go, okay, if they're able to switch that, yeah, that's why I'm lost. Because if a brewery is able to switch it pretty quickly, do you or not? But at the same time, maybe you do. And this guy that I know is making him for his county, he's making it for his county, but he also, his wife's a vet. So, would between those two things, he have access to things we don't? I have seen videos of people making it. But I will say this. They said it was more liquid than hand sanitizer usually is. And that, to me, is suspicious, and it would scare me, or I wouldn't trust it. Not that it would scare me, but I wouldn't trust it as good, because that would mean it's not staying in place as well, good enough to do its job. Because obviously, if it's thinner than regular hand sanitizer, it's not going to have the same thing. Yeah, that's what I heard. Is, there's a few places that are making it. A few breweries that have switched to making it. So I would say it probably depends on the machine you have, what you have access to, whatever else. Because, and I haven't looked into it well enough to know if I would trust it or not. That was one that I would personally wait on. At the same time, I think a step that the CDC has finally come out and said, and you guys have heard me say this on here plenty, but the CDC has finally come out and said everyone, when you go into public, should wear a mask. Period. It doesn't need to be the N95, but any type of mask is going to protect you more than nothing. And they found that just talking to someone is enough to spread it. So, at least from what they're saying now. So, a step I would take, and another thing to be aware of, and this is part of the reason I'm not quite so gung-ho on hand sanitizer and worried about that one quite as much as other things. If you're wearing a mask, you aren't going to be putting your hand to your face as much. And then if you wash your hands when you get home and are washing your hands more, washing your hands actually removes more of the virus than hand sanitizer does. It's more effective. So, you'd be better to wear a mask and wash your hands frequently than to just use hand sanitizer. Is if you want the most protection possible. That's the way you're going to get it. And there's a lot of instructions out there for making different masks. If you look for it, you can actually find there's certain types of cloth they're recommending are the best for making masks with. If people around here were interested, I might be able and want to pay for the cloth. I could probably see about grabbing my mom's sewing machine or something and going from there. I totally agree on the protection is protection. I can see the hand sanitizer off and on, but I guess what the thing is I've seen so many people, they're like, well, we need hand sanitizer like crazy, but I'm not going to wear a mask. And I'm not going to wash my hands with soap and water. And of those three, the best thing you can do is wash your hands with soap and water. And the next best thing is wear a mask. And I do get where you're coming from, Jen. And yes, hand sanitizer can be a good thing. So I heard of a good example, and that does bring up this. I heard of a good example of what to imagine this as, and it's glitter. So you go into the store, talk to someone, and talking to someone, they don't know they have it, they aren't wearing a mask. It gets all over you. You go and get in your car, and it's all over you. And then it gets on everything you touch. And you go in and you wash your hands, and it removes some of them. The problem is, it's now there. You know, you may think of it when you get out of the house or get out of the car to go in your house from the store. But then the next question becomes, what about when you get out of your car and go into your work? What about when you come home from work and you haven't gone anywhere? You're still in the same vehicle with the same thing. What some people are actually doing is Clorox wipes or stuff like that. And I actually, if you want to go that way, another home product that I would vouch for, there are the solutions of Clorox wipes where you take bleach and you mix it in with water and keep a container of that along with a washcloth. Yeah, exactly. And so then you have a washcloth that has the bleach solution, that either you can dip in the bleach solution and get all wet and wipe things down with, or that you can keep in the solution. Either way, it's probably better to wipe it down, rinse it out in the bleach solution, wring it out and let it dry in the sun. Your washcloth will get white if it wasn't already white, but you can keep using the same bleach solution for anywhere from a day to a few days, depending on how often you use it, what you use it for. If it's just in your car, you possibly could even get by with it for a week. I'm not sure how long exactly they're saying there. But that would be a solution that then you're killing all of it everywhere other than on your clothes. You're killing everywhere you're touching rather than just killing what's on your hands and then immediately touching everything again. Because if you think about it, you've still got it on your clothes and on your etc., etc. So there is that to keep in mind. And you can actually look up online how long things last, etc. But I would say if you really want to do a homemade, and yeah, that, so back to the home sanitizer getting too much alcohol or too little, I can totally see that. Because you can't, and here's another thing that a lot of people don't take into account. Most of those hand sanitizer solutions have aloe vera as part of it. And first of all, there's a rush on aloe vera too. Second, if you've ever used aloe vera solution, the consistency changes depending on the temperature. So you have to be able to get an accurate measurement of how much you're using, you have to use a specific temperature, and no one's talking about that. And so then you get more or less aloe vera, which is actually part of the buffer solution. And depending, and you actually, I would think, to get it to mix in with the alcohol best to be able to create the best hand sanitizer solution, you would need to have it at a specific temperature while it's mixing, which probably means in a temperature controlled basin or whatever while you're mixing it, so that you can keep it from getting too hot from the mixing, but that you don't have to start out too cold. You can keep it at the exact right temperature during mixing. Anyone who's made chocolate chip cookies knows that when you first put the chocolate chips in, they're hard and they mix just fine. But if you mix them too long, they start to melt into the mix. And it's that idea with the aloe vera, but you also need to mix it enough to get it thoroughly incorporated completely, the alcohol and the aloe vera and whatever else. So that's why I say, in my mind, it would be a little bit iffy on the homemade alcohol, or hand sanitizer. But if you have homemade, you buy your bleach and have the homemade bleach solution, you're gonna, if you use it frequently, dipping your hands in, you're going to have the same problem as if you're cleaning with bleach all the time and not wearing gloves. But it's going to be effective. It's what they've used for years and years and years and years and years in food establishments for cleaning. And there's a reason they use it, and it's because it's effective. Now, if for some reason where you're working has a lot of fat and stuff like that, like at Horlockers, you're going to need to change it out at least daily, if not more frequently, naturally, because it's going to get dirty. Restaurants have to change it out really frequently, but it's effective. And it's already been proven effective, and it's something that anyone can easily make at home. You don't have to have a knowledge of chemistry or anything else. If you get the mix slightly off, it's not going to affect the ability of it to work as well. I mean, if you get it majorly off, it will, but you don't have to have as close to exact proportions as you do for hand sanitizer, etc. So that's my feeling on those. And yeah, Steph, I can see where you're coming from. And that's one thing I've seen a lot of people doing that. One thing I will say, and I don't want to sound bad or anything. I did watch someone on YouTube who did that, and I watched because she was doing the way she was doing it. She didn't realize that her hands were where her hands were hitting on the boxes. So here you're wiping it down, touching it with a hand. You pick up the box with both hands, or one hand has the wipe on and one hand doesn't. Well, the hand that's touching the box technically is now infected. So if you touch another area of the box that you've just cleaned with that very same hand, it is spreading some of that glitter. Another thing to think about, though, and there is this. we don't know how many viruses it takes to become infected. And if you think of glitter, okay, if you put your hand directly in the container of glitter, you've got glitter all over. If you touch your desk and then someone else touches your desk, they don't have as much glitter on their hands as you did on yours. So the farther from the original point of contamination, the less viruses are transmitted, even though they are still transmitted. So then it becomes a point where there may be viruses on that, but if there's enough that your hand will come into contact with the area that has the one virus in that area, or not, is in question. And how many viruses do you need to actually become sick? One thing they are finding, or there are people who have become sick enough that they're developing antibodies, but not sick enough to have any symptoms whatsoever. And so we don't know what that point is. And so there's that question too. So I agree with being, especially where you're at, it's probably even more so, be very careful. Another thing I have heard that I kind of is what I would recommend even more so is go ahead and get your groceries and whatever. Take in the stuff that's going to go bad. Stuff that goes in your fridge and freezer. Wipe those down and wipe them down good. Put them away. Anything else, you can either leave it in your trunk or pull it out of your trunk and put it in your car. Not your car, in your garage or in a specific place. And no one touches anything in that area for anywhere from a day to 3 days, depending on what it's packed in. You can look up the amount of time that it lives on different surfaces. And if it's past that time, then you don't even need to wipe it down, because everything's already dead. So then you can come out of the house having, being clean and whatever, and immediately and access those things, take them in, knowing that there is not the chance that you touched it wrong or that etc. And you don't have to worry as much about using wipes or things like that. Now, bleach becoming less common, I can see that, because people are trying to find other things other than wipes to use. And this is one of the things. One thing to be aware of, though, is it takes a lot less bleach than wipes. I think it's something like a half a cup a gallon or something. So a 1 gallon bleach container could last you for a number of months, possibly even, with doing this consistently. So, hand sanitizer's pretty rare. Honestly, I've heard and you were asking about hand sanitizer. Well, the thing is you say bleach is rare. From everything I've seen, the supplies to make hand sanitizer is rare too. So basically, it's kind of one of those things you just kind of have to watch out for. And that's one way to do it. If you aren't even opening your window or anything, you could easily just, if you have a wipe, because I don't know how effective. If I remember right, the Lysol disinfecting spray was actually not effective against the last SARS virus. So whether it's effective against this one, I'm not sure. You'd want to look that up. If it's not, having a wipe or a Clorox washcloth or something wipe down the trunk where, the outside of the trunk and whatever. And then wait till you get to home or wherever and pull out anything that, like I said, would go bad in that time and wipe those down. And you could even wait till you get home to wipe those down, because it's not going to migrate on the trunk. It'll stay where it is until you get home, and then you could wipe it down. It won't jump to you. It'll still be sitting there. So if you've kept your window up the whole time, you will not be infected. The ways that you would be infected is if you rolled down your window, and I know a lot of the pickup places are allowing you to just call and talk to them on the phone, or they stay 6 feet away or more or whatever, and so that there's enough distance, and especially wearing a mask too. But that's up to you. I'm just saying there is that then you get home, wipe it down, take out what you need immediately, and or what'll go bad, obviously. Get those clean and put everything else to the side, and you'd be better there. I've heard that the number of people here in Utah and Cache Valley is growing. Caden's telling me they have 3 specific days in April around the 20-something that they think it's going to peak, and we're going to get 20 infections or more a day during those 3 days. I personally don't know how you could figure that out. I totally get that. I just wanted to point out that the Lysol disinfecting spray may not be effective against this virus. That's something you're going to want to look into, because there are some things it's not effective against. And so before you're using something that it's not effective against it, yeah. And I have to admit, probably if it were just me, I would go to that step. But considering my kids go to work, and I have to fight them to take a mask with them to work, and Brett goes to work, and he comes home, and no, he doesn't come in and wash his hands. He just comes in. Well, I washed my hands as I left work, and that's sufficient. And Caden admits he's not wearing a mask at work, but everyone else, but most of his department is, so he's good. And he doesn't wash it, so he comes in our house, and then he goes over to his grandma and grandpa's without washing his hands. And then he comes back over to our house, still doesn't wash his hands. There's a certain point where I can go crazy trying to keep the family protected. But if the family is not going to do their part in helping protect the family, I can't do much. But I can, there's those... Sometimes I wish I could, I'll be honest. Yeah. I would say of all of them, the one that's the most willing to listen is Daniel. So I thought so too. I thought Mom had closed the shop, but I guess yesterday she contacted Mindy and told her, no, we're still open. I need you to come into work. So they're still going in. I dropped her off at work. That's why I'm playing right now. Is because she's at work. And so there's that. And so that's Mindy and Stephen David's home, but getting really antsy. And Danny's like the most calm and the most understanding of everyone. How long that'll happen, I'm not sure, but that's the way it is. And yeah, I agree if we could get away, but there's also, I guess I go back and forth, because I'm also, the more I find out that people are actually testing positive now that they have this test, they're testing as though they've had the virus and recovered, like the virus isn't in their bloodstream anymore, but they have antibodies to it, is also making me go, okay. I will say, from what I saw, there's two things that are right on the edge right now. One, they have the testing already available. And it sounds like they're going to want to test almost everyone. Because they want to find out who has the antibodies and how much they need to be prepared for during the next flu season for this to pop up. So who will be immune versus how many people they're going to have to worry about. The second thing that they're talking about is that there's a vaccine that's on the edge of being completed, it sounds like. If it's listed on the CDC website, I would trust it. I wasn't sure, and I knew that there's some things that it's not effective against, and there are some things that are not effective against the virus. And so knowing those two things, it was, well, let's just make sure. But if it's listed there, then I would trust it. So, I said that because of that. And that's another thing. If you run out of Lysol spray the same solution that I was talking about for wiping stuff down can be put in a spray bottle and sprayed, and that's effective. Oh, another thing I've heard on what's effective against it, hydrogen peroxide straight is also effective at killing it. So you just spray that on or pour it on, and that's effective at killing it too. Obviously, you don't want to be pouring hydrogen peroxide all over your hands, probably. Or unless you're okay with having continuously white hands. And I mean white. And that's possible. I'm not sure. I will be honest, when I looked last, it was when it was kind of first all happening and there was the rush on everything. And we knew we had some packages coming and whatever. And so I was looking at what kills it at that point that would work. I read that it was. Let's look it up. Yeah. Hydrogen peroxide's fine. So soap and water, bleach, isopropyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, it has to be, and this may be where you read it. You have to spray it on or put it on and then let it sit there. You can't be wiping it off. A lot of people aren't using it because it can discolor fabrics or the hands. Homemade hand sanitizer, they're saying, is not good for it. Vodka, distilled white vinegar, that's a huge one. The distilled white vinegar that everyone's, usually for is not. Tea tree oil is not expected to be. So the two things most people that don't want to buy stuff turn to, which is tea tree oil and white vinegar, they have come out saying, no, those do not work. So, do either of you need the extravagant runestone? I guess I'll wait till Steph gets back. That's what I was thinking. I'll keep trying to get another essential, or not essential, extravagant spell energy. Unless you want a specific potion, I can try and get that. A specific ingredient one. I think I haven't opened gifts for a little while. Just because I get busy doing stuff and then I forget on the gifts. Okay. I will look for those then. I'll start pulling some greenhouses. And I will say, Jen, from what I've understood, we probably have a lot more than 25 cases around here. It's just people have understood that they can't go get tested, and so they're not. And that even if it was weeks ago, they wouldn't have been able to get tested, but now they can. They just aren't going in. And they're getting better, and they're telling their friends who get sick not to go in and get tested. And they're just staying home and getting, or even going out in public while sick. And just, oh well, I'll treat it like any other cold. Sadly, I think people are a little bit off on the way they act here. I agree with that. And the Barufios was a guaranteed toadstool. Tell you what, if that was the case, I would be wanting a lot more ingredient ones. I get where you're coming from. My thing is, I've seen enough that I don't believe if it was Obama who issued the same orders, we would have much difference here in Cache Valley. And I'm talking about here in Cache Valley. In that one, I will say we're just too backwards. That's the key. We're too backwards here. So we don't see, or so people are so used to not having the depressions that most states have. Not, when things are hitting other states hard, Utah usually gets away without getting hit. And so people are careless. A lot of the kids are careless. It can't hit us. Things like that. I mean, I hate to say it, but my family is the perfect example. Brett's sister is a nurse. You'd think he'd understand better the risks that come along with it. Caden's sister decided not to come up and stay up here where she has family and whatever, and instead stay home even though she's feeling lonely, because she didn't want to put her grandma and grandpa at risk. And yet Caden's going to work, not wearing a mask, and going over to his grandma's and grandpa's, and then coming to our house, and then going out with his friend, and then who works at JBS, that's around people all the time, and has no problem. He has friends over to his house all the time, and etc. So honestly, I would say if we were to go through, Caden is the highest risk in our family of bringing it home. Brett is the second highest, just because of their actions. They don't understand, and I've tried and tried and tried and tried and tried to talk to him about it. No, Brett didn't go to JBS sick. Other people went. Oh yeah, Caden's friend went to JBS sick. You're right. And it's that type of idea that they don't understand, and they don't see a issue with it. In some ways, I think we've pushed through too much. We've taught the kids to, you're sick, who cares, go to work. And I did? I thought I saved it. If I did, I sent it to the wrong person. Sorry. If so, I'll save it. I'll have one for tomorrow. I did. I hit the wrong one. That gives me till tomorrow to get some more. But yeah, I think it's that. And I get that, but at the same time, I don't even think it was that, honestly. Yeah, it may have had some effect on it, but the people I'm hearing it from, like, I hate to say this, but my dad hates Trump to no other, and he feels that they're making too big of a deal of it. In fact, interestingly enough, a lot of the people I'm hearing the most complaints about, they're either I'm hearing it from from every side, from people who hate. Yeah, that's what it is. It's that busy as a beaver, beehive, whatever, etc. That is in the Mormon psyche enough that when I got so sick a couple years ago that literally I could not stay awake, we couldn't figure out why. My doctor and I were we were going to every doctor. The doctor could see, my primary care could see something was wrong. He knew something physically was wrong and we needed to find the solution. And my dad's answer to that solution was, get up and get to work. That's the whole problem. Because if you were just busy, you wouldn't be tired. And that was literally my dad's answer to it. Even though my doctor's saying, no, physically something's wrong with you, my dad was going, no, it's just all mental. If you just would put your mind to it, you'd get over it. And you wouldn't have any problems. And literally you push harder. And so, it wasn't just my dad, but, dads are some of the ones that are, moms and dads are supposed to listen to you the most. And so it was just a symptom of what was going on and what I was getting from many different sides. And literally, and this is what was so interesting for me at the time. The only person who fully believed me, Brett was starting to wonder what's going on. And the only reason Brett wasn't complaining, even though I could see it in him, was that the doctor said something's wrong and he was trying to find a solution. And Brett was kind of like, well, I guess I don't understand why these numbers are so bad. You're supposed to keep your A1C as low as possible, and yours is amazingly low. And it was hard for him to understand that there's a point where it's too low, and that I had hit that point, and we couldn't get it up. And so there was that. And usually with EDA or EDS, usually the problem is the opposite. Your family, that the doctors are the ones who aren't believing you. So that was weird. It's been 2 years ago. It was March 21st, 2 years ago. That Danny was diagnosed, and a week after that I was diagnosed. Yeah, that's one thing I love my doctor for, is even as other people are saying, no, it's all in their head, or no, nothing's wrong, and they just need to push harder, or they're faking it, or this or that. My doctor has more than once with me and with my kids said, no, this is not faking it. There is something wrong, and we're going to treat the symptoms until we can find out what's going wrong. And in the end, we found out what's wrong, but he's been willing to go to bat for us for years. And that's actually helped us have other doctors listen to us, which is why actually our diagnosis didn't take near as long as usually it takes to get diagnosed with EDS, because we had a doctor saying, something's wrong. We're going to keep referring you to doctors. We're going to keep trying to find out what's wrong. until we get an answer. And it's not you asking for it, it's me insisting on it. And he put that in the records. And so the doctors couldn't say, and more than once the doctors would look at me and they're like, so who's insisting, or, you could see, so what's wrong? And I'd tell them, here's what's going on, here's what the doctor said, and that you could see, so is this just all in your head? And then they'd read the notes. Oh, no, never mind, that your doctors referred you for this, and I can tell he was the one who asked for the referral, not you. So let's look into this deeper. And things like that. And so, if we couldn't get answers, he'd say, okay, I'm going to treat what I can here. And, but he always passed on all of his records that proved that it was more, would come in and, so what's going on? Here's what, here's the symptoms. What should we do? Should we just, and they would see that he was the one insisting on answers more than we were even, and that all it ever took was, that we were not one of the ones that would push for treatment. So that helped us out a lot because we had him believing us. So that's been huge for us for treatment and everything else. Because he completely believed us. And that's most doctors. I hate to say it, but that's most doctors. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. Well, our doctor has not, he's known that, at times I'm like, and that's part of it, is I'm not afraid to sit down and say, do we need to get in counseling for this, etc., etc. And those are in his notes. And so when we come in with something, I think he's more open. Not that I think it's the choices I'm making that are doing it, as much as I believe he knows if he were to say, no, we just need to get you into counseling, I think this is more in your head, we would try that first. But in general, every time it's ended up being due to EDS. And so, but other than, I will say, Mindy is on medication for depression, or for anxiety, not depression, and Stephen is. And so I guess maybe that's part of it too, is I'm not afraid to treat when treatment's needed. In my mind, there's no difference from treating a mental, as most people call it, disorder, as a physical disorder. I don't think they're really any different. I mean, so a lot of depression or anxiety or things like that are an imbalance in the body due to either experiences you've gone through or different things like that. Just as getting sick, or just as diabetes is an imbalance in your body due to a lack of insulin, either because it's produced wrong or because it's not produced. And so to me, it's all, there is is no physical, mental, it's all interlinked. And my doctor totally agrees with that. But I think maybe it makes it easier for him to know that it's okay for him to say, this is mental, let's treat this. Let's treat this with anxiety. It's either it's anxiety, or it's PTSD, or it's this or that or the other. It, to me, is a diagnosis just like diabetes or EDS or etc. And you find ways to treat and to live your life the best you can with the following the prescriptions you're given. With diabetes, the prescription often is diet and exercise, and at times and some type of medication, whether it's metformin or insulin or what it is, some type of treatment. Anxiety, usually there's some learning to live with it, and so there's certain things you do to help reduce your anxiety and cope when things are bad that you learn, just like kind of like a diet. And then there's medications to treat it. And just like with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, if you are able to control your diet well enough, you may not need to be on medication. Well, the same is true of some depressions and some PTSD, anxiety, etc. But that could change at any time. Just like with type 2 diabetes, you may have it completely diet controlled for years. And then something happens and it's not able to be controlled by diet anymore, or just for a time it's not able to be. And so you treat with prescriptions. And maybe that's why my doctor has been so willing to fight for us for when he feels it's physical, is that he knows that if he says it's something else, I'll totally accept it and we'll try that method. But that, I will say, is a mentality that not many people in this world have. A lot of people, oh, you've got anxiety, don't let anyone know. Or, oh, you've got PTSD, don't let anyone know. And I think you guys know me, I'm just too open. I've got PTSD, and I don't care if the world knows I have PTSD. But right now, I'm at a point in my life where it's controlled by coping techniques. And I haven't had to go on medication, to be on medication for a while. At the same time, when I'm struggling and I'm having a hard time, I'm contacting my doctor and I'm saying, have we passed this line? What am I watching for? Are we having issues now and I need to treat? Or are we good to go still and I just need to figure something else, something else is going on. And so that's my feeling. And I guess, and it may be that that's part of why my doctors are so willing to go to bat for me, is because I try to be a active participant in my own care, but I don't ever try to say I know more than my doctors. If they say something, okay, let's try it. Let's see what happens as we try this medication, or as we do this or whatever. when the kids, he felt it was time that they needed to be on medication, the two of them that are for anxiety or depression. I said, okay, here's what happened with my depression. Let's go ahead and try it. But I do want to keep a close eye on them. Because here's what that medication did to me. But I'm okay, let's try it. And I could see was a shock to the doctor at that time, even with the relationship we had, that he was surprised I was okay trying it, as long as we had everyone on board, keeping an eye out, making sure that we did not have issues. But he also agreed when he heard what the issue was, we are keeping a really close eye on them at first with this. Because he was like, yeah, that would not be a good result. We do not want to replace the depression or anxiety with that. So, yeah, but one thing about my PTSD, it does get triggered, but I've learned more, or at this point right now, I'm at a point where a lot of times I can use breathing techniques, coping techniques, shut out a little bit to deal with it. And I know shutting out isn't the best way. If Steph was listening, I bet she'd be going, no! But one thing I found is that if I can shut out for a few minutes and I make sure it's when I can. It's not just like out of the blue I shut off. But if I can shut off for a few minutes, kind of to regroup and recenter, I'm so far able to deal with it. But if I ever wasn't, we've already talked about a care plan if things get bad. You know, if something were to happen and I needed to treat immediately, we already know a good medication that immediately starts to act, that you can get addicted to, let me make that very clear. But then we know a follow-up medication that as soon as, that if the stressor is going to last more than really short, to where we feel I need a more longer-term medication, we would be prepared with it. We already know what medication it would be. In fact, Mindy's partially on, she's actually on 2 different medications. And she agrees that without the medication they would put me on, she wouldn't be doing near as good as she is. So, but that's exactly it. We are prepared. We have a treatment plan in place that when needed, here's what we do. And we also know specifically, so that's with the PTSD. I have have had hormonal depression in the past. Mindy changed my hormones enough when I was pregnant with her that it went away. But there's also a care plan in place for if I start getting depressed again, what are the first steps we would take to try and deal with that. And so, yeah. As for Brett and his diabetes, I agree. I would think he would care more. But honestly, and I'm going to be 100% honest, the number of times, so my EDS and the issues that cause me to get exhausted and everything else. The treatment I have, the pills I take, I am better about having my pills with me than Brett is about having his insulin with him. And yet, at the same time, mine just makes it so the food digests faster, which means really I can go a while without taking it, and it really won't make a big difference. As you know, Brett, if he doesn't get his insulin, all it takes is an hour or two, and his blood sugar may be high. And yet, I have my medication with me more often than he has his insulin with him. And that one is a frustration to me. Because it's like, it kind of tells me he doesn't really care, and he doesn't comprehend how serious it could be for him. And yet here I am, I'm the one trying to get a healthy diet that'll help me and the kids and him, and he's the one who cares? I'm just going to live my life as though nothing's wrong. And yet it's his life that's on the line even more than mine. Well, yeah, even more than mine, because even with the PTSD, we are prepared any second, and that's also part of it. Kind of as an example, that I hate to say this, but when I was in school, I had a teacher who found out I had PTSD. And they basically said, I don't get it. How do you have such low blood pressure and have PTSD? Usually by the time you're in your 20s, with PTSD, if you've had it since you were a child, your blood pressure is through the roof and killing you. Like, you are dying because of your PTSD, usually. And yet your body is not showing a lot of I'm seeing some of the signs that make it clear, yes, you do have this. I'm seeing the signs that make it no doubt so I have no doubt in my mind you have it, but I don't get how the bad signs aren't here. You've only got the dangerous signs aren't there. You've only got the other signs. The ones that aren't going to kill you in the next 5 or 10 years. And she said, I don't get it. You are amazing. You have more control over your body than most people do. Now I know part of it was probably the EDS. Because it probably helped lower my blood pressure, so that whenever I did have a major scare, things like that, I could have the higher adrenaline rush and everything, but not be pushing it. But I wasn't it wasn't high enough that it then would risk my life. So, in fact, in a way, the PTSD may have kept my blood pressure higher than it would have been. And if that's the case, And I will say this, with EDS, one thing about EDS is that you can actually have blood pressure low enough it could kill you. So they kind of counteract each other in many ways. But that's one thing they've said, is that my resting heart rate and even my exercise heart rate and stuff does not indicate my heart's in much better shape than people looking at me would assume looking at my body. And especially then but it could be due to the PTSD. The interaction between PTSD and ADHD, not ADHD, EDS. Because that interaction, the EDS may have kept my blood pressure low, allowing my heart to work stronger at times, and so that I could have my heart without needing to do high aerobic intensity exercises to keep my heart in shape. My heart actually stayed in shape just by scares. By people scaring me. Because when I am watching a movie or I'm scared or stuff like that, and it's part of why I do not like scary movies, and most movies at all, is if you scare me, it can take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour for my heart rate to normalize again. It's beating a lot faster for that time than normal. So when you look at a lot of movies, if you take that into consideration, you can imagine the workout it puts my body through, and then and most people, okay, they get that workout and then it's over. For me, I get the workout, but it's still working out for another 10 minutes to an hour. So you can see why I would easily get nightmares. And then when I get a nightmare, it brings it back up for another that long, and can take, most people after a nightmare, if you can get them after it, they can fall asleep within a short amount of time once they realize it was just a nightmare. For me, when I have a nightmare, I may be up for a couple of hours because of that nightmare. And so it can leave me sleep deprived the next day by watching a movie one day, and the sleep deprived usually means then the next night there's still a little bit higher chance of having a nightmare. So it isn't just a okay right now thing when I'm watching a movie. I have to take into account that this may affect how long this may affect me for. I will say, for some reason, that doesn't happen as bad when I'm reading books, even though it's like I'm living in the situation. Actually, in those cases, it's almost like my body becomes the body of the person that I'm reading, the heroine or the hero or whoever. And so I'm able to enjoy the rush, and as soon as I close the book, it's done. And I'm going to have trouble for a few days afterwards. Last night we actually watched Fantastic Beasts 2. I've watched it a number of times before, but there was one point I'm just like, nope, it's kind of late at night. If I don't get up and leave right now, I'm in trouble. And so I got up and I left for part of one of my favorite movies. because that was the best way to help my body deal with the situation. So, yeah. Yes, like Princess Bride, but yes, most movies. So if you think about it, the indication is in the stress disorder portion. Basically, when you scare someone with PTSD or they have a flashback or stuff like that, well, when you scare someone, their heart's racing for a lot longer, which is, when your heart's racing, it raises your blood pressure. Well, if you do that enough, and what happens is that your blood pressure stays up because it's putting such pressure on your arteries and veins and stuff all the time. And so it keeps your blood pressure up. And so it can kill you. And so a lot of people, their adrenals shut down. And then they end up on blood pressure medication from PTSD. Especially if they don't get on medication for it soon enough or learn treatment techniques soon enough to keep it low. And so, yeah, I just ended up in the group that whether it was EDS or what, helped me out. See, and I can't watch most movies in the middle of the day. I can watch Thomas the Tank Engine or different things like that. But most movies are a no-go. So that's why they are always complaining that I won't watch The Avengers, I won't watch Doctor Who, I won't watch this, I won't watch that, because I won't. I prefer to keep my body under control, to not deal with the aftermath of watching a scary movie. I've got too much responsibility anyway. So I'll stay home and do stuff that I enjoy, or work on channels, or clean, or things like that. Which, working on channels a lot of times I enjoy anyway, but yeah. Then go watch a movie, make myself miserable, and have it last for days, so. That's one thing I've never had, and I don't know why, but I never get nightmares from a book. Ever. At least so far. And I believe they're good movies and a good show. I think it's just, it's one of those, you take into account the time you have, you take into account what it's going to do to you and what it's going to do to your body. And you weigh the pros and cons, and to me the cons outweigh the pros. And so, and that's what I do with every movie. And my family accepts it. They realize that that's the way it is, because that's the way it's always been. And so yeah, I'm very careful on my shows. And like I said, I'm sure a big part of it is, honestly, I don't like the feeling. honestly, I don't like the feeling of being out of control per se, which is kind of how I feel when I'm going in a flashback or watching a lot of scary shows, etc., is I feel out of control. And there's nothing I can do about it other than leave the room. And, well, you can't really leave the room in a theater. And otherwise, then my mind actually goes more crazy trying to figure out how it ended. So it's kind of easier to just, nope, I'm not going to watch it in the first place. I haven't watched any of the Star Wars movies, Star Trek movies. That one I was a bit better. I don't think I watched the movies, but I could watch the shows because they were like 30 minutes. I could put up with a 30-minute quick, short, and then it's done. But those were probably pushed me the most was the Star Trek shows. See, and the angels, and I think the angels are the statues or whatever too, they scare Mindy. And if they scare Mindy, no. That's why I won't watch Doctor Who, is my own kids are scared of him. And if they're scared of him, there's no way I could deal with them. So, anyway, I am home. And it looks like Brett's still in the vehicle too. So I need to go see what's going on there. So,